When my mother passed away last spring, the entire family gathered for the reading of her will, expecting the usual. The house split between me and my brother, some savings, her jewelry. Instead, the lawyer read out a name none of us recognized. A woman named Grace Whitmore, who was left the majority of my mother's estate, including the house I grew up in. My brother stood up and stormed out. I stayed in that chair, quiet, because a part of me already suspected who Grace might be. My name is Mira. I'm 34, and my mother, Farida, raised my brother Zishan and me alone after our father passed when I was 7. She worked 2 jobs, never remarried, never even mentioned dating anyone. She was private about her past in a way we always respected, until this will made her secrecy impossible to ignore. I remembered, as a teenager, finding an old photograph tucked in one of her drawers. My mother, much younger, standing next to a baby girl who wasn't me or my brother. When I'd asked about it, she'd simply said, "That was a long time ago," and put it away. I never asked again. After the will reading, I couldn't stop thinking about that photograph. I went back to my mother's house that same week and found the same drawer, still locked. I finally broke it open with a screwdriver, feeling like I was trespassing on her privacy, even though she was gone. Inside were old letters, adoption paperwork from over 30 years ago, and a birth certificate for a baby girl named Grace, born 4 years before me, placed for adoption when my mother was only 19, unmarried and living with parents who refused to support her keeping the child. My mother had a daughter before either of us, a daughter she was forced to give up and never stopped thinking about. I found Grace's contact information among the papers. My mother had clearly kept track of her for years, even if she never reached out. I sat with the letters for 2 full days before I worked up the courage to call. Grace answered, cautious at first, until I explained who I was. There was a long silence on the line before she said quietly, "I always wondered if she thought about me." We met in person a week later. Grace was warm, nervous, achingly similar to my mother in the shape of her eyes and the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking. She told me my mother had reached out to her adoptive family once, years ago, and had been quietly sending money for Grace's education without ever revealing who she was. Money that Grace's adoptive parents had simply told her came from a family friend. My mother had watched over her from a distance for over 3 decades, unable to bridge the gap she herself had created out of fear and circumstance. Grace hadn't even known she was in the will until the lawyer contacted her. She told me she almost didn't come to the reading. She assumed it was a mistake or some kind of scam. Zishan, my brother, took much longer to come around. He felt betrayed, as though our mother had hidden an entire chapter of her life and then rewarded a stranger over her own children who'd stayed and cared for her. I understood his anger, because I'd felt it too, briefly, before the letters showed me the fuller picture. A young, frightened teenage girl who spent the rest of her life quietly making up for a choice she never truly got to make on her own. Eventually, the 3 of us sat down together, something I never imagined happening a month earlier. I showed Zishan the letters, the years of small deposits Grace never knew the source of. Our mother's own handwriting describing how much she thought about the daughter she couldn't keep every single birthday. Slowly, his anger softened into something closer to grief for a sister he never knew he had. We didn't contest the will. Instead, we split the estate 3 ways ourselves, something our mother never explicitly asked for, but that felt like the only right way forward.
Grace became part of our family in the months that followed. Hesitant at first, then less so with every dinner, every holiday she was invited to. A year later, we scattered some of our mother's ashes together at the small lake where she used to take my brother and me every summer. Grace stood between us, no longer a stranger, but the sister our mother spent her whole life quietly
loving from a distance, and finally, after her death, brought home.